Good morning. Hello, hello. I didn't pre-schedule like I normally do, so I'll give everyone a chance to get logged in. My name is Tina Swithin. I am founder of the blog One Mom's Battle. I'm also the author of Divorcing a Narcissist, and somebody recently said, "You're one of the OGs," and that's kind of funny. Not what you want to be known for, but yeah, when I started out on this path in 2009, there was really only one other person that I know of who was talking about narcissist and these issues, and that was Dr. Carol McBride. She's in Colorado. And back then, I remember just feeling so excited when I connected with Dr. Craig Malkin, and he was, one of the other ones, way back then doing this work and talking about these things. And so, it's been a journey. Good morning, Alex. So just my fine print disclaimer, I'm not able to give legal advice. I'm absolutely not an attorney. I have hairs going, it's been I'm kind of, should have brushed my hair a little better. Good morning, Ashley. I'm not an attorney. I cannot give you legal advice. We're just a community of survivors coming together and talking about the realities of going up against a narcissist in the family court system. Good morning, Danielle. I'm going to do things a little bit different than I normally do them today with Coffee with Tina. Good morning, Emily. For those of you who have followed my journey, good morning, Mandy. I have been through a lot recently. And some of it I talk about, some of it I have kept kind of in the background because for a variety of reasons. But today what I want to talk about is kind of what I've been through lately. And that is, when we are going up against a narcissist, it's usually not just one of them. There's usually other toxic family members who come on board to help them. Most of these individuals would not be able to pull off what they do to the level that they do without help. And one of the things I'm going to call out, I see a lot of really enabling moms. And I know that was one of the issues that I was personally up against through every part of my journey through the family court system during my marriage. Good morning, Gigi, Mandy. This is, good morning, Jen. I have always maintained that my battle was not really against my ex-husband. My battle was against my ex-mother-in-law. And I'm really jealous that it's raining in Baltimore. That's my favorite band is the Counting Crows. That's a lyric. I'm just jealous that there's rain somewhere. We're back in a drought here in California. And I don't know how to pronounce those bugs you just mentioned, Gigi, but I'll tell you, I've seen a couple articles, and no, thank you. I'll skip whatever those little things are called. So okay, so I'm going to go back to the beginning. My custody battle, for those of you who don't know, started in 2009 in the San Luis Obispo family court system here in California. And it spanned the most intense portion from 2009 to 2014. And that's when I successfully, and I represented myself. That's where I was able to cut off all contact between my ex-husband and my daughters. And during that portion of my battle, one of the biggest points of contention was my ex-mother-in-law's insistence that her family, image, they all come together. They're just these wonderful people, specifically her oldest son. And I'm going to say his name, Jason Robert Porter, out of Paso Robles. You can Google all about him. And I feel comfortable saying that now. Before, I had to say that he was an alleged child molester, child predator. He has now been convicted as of last week of 52 counts of the most horrific abuse against children. He will never see the light of day. He will never be eligible for parole. He will never be eligible for I call it the Kalinga State Hospital Country Club for pedophiles. He will die in prison where he belongs. And during my battle, this family was so insistent that, and it confuses a lot of people. They're like, wait, why did the court order your kids to be around someone, in the family? These people were filing declarations about how wonderful he was, that I was making all this up, that, I should have no concerns about my daughters being around my ex-brother-in-law. And my ex-brother-in-law, when my husband and I were married in 2008, he actually took such a hard stance with his mom that I was so proud of him. One of the only times, probably the only time, any of the four brothers have ever stood up to her. And he said, we will not have our kids around this man. This is a man who is homicidal, suicidal, beats puppies, all of these things. He laid it out in an email, which I had for the court to say, look, it's not my word against his. These are his words. And what we know about narcissists and sociopaths is that the children become pawns and they become weapons in the post-separation abuse. And so the very first thing my ex-husband did when we separated was take my kids around his brother. He knew that was the number one way to hurt me. And my youngest daughter was 2, and she didn't even know that she had an uncle. We had done such a good job of holding his mom back, putting her in her place, refusing to attend family functions where he would be. And so my ex-husband knew that was the way to hurt me. And I still remember in February of 2010, my battle had been going on about 6 months. And I remember looking something up on Facebook and finding a picture of the whole family gathered together 2 months before at Christmas. And my daughters were in the picture, and so was my ex-brother-in-law. And I freaked out. Absolute panic and terror to see it with my own eyes and to know that my ex had been lying to me about not bringing the girls around him. And we were in the middle of a custody evaluation, and I had so much hope for that evaluation, like many of you do. And I reached out to the evaluator right away with that picture, and I said, we need to talk. We need to talk about how dangerous this person was. I didn't even know this was an issue. I thought this was a moot point, that we had both agreed my kids would never be around this man. And I still remember in June of 2010, the end of her evaluation, sitting down with her. Her name is Noelia de la Torre of San Luis Obispo Family Court Services. It's a branch of the court. She had been appointed to do our custody evaluation. And I remember sitting down with her and my ex-husband in a room, which is traumatic in itself. And when she got to the point about my ex-brother-in-law in her report, and she said, what my recommendation is that he will be allowed to be around your girls 4th of July, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, no. 4th of July, Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. 4 holidays a year, but your ex-husband or his mom has to be there. And I had to get up and excuse myself. That was the point of the entire report that completely put me over the edge. I went in the bathroom, I bawled my eyes out, I composed myself, I came back, and I said, what if I refuse to sign this? What if I absolutely say, no, I'm not agreeing to this? And she said, well, if you don't sign, this will go in front of the court as my recommendation. The judge is going to make this recommendation anyway, and then you will receive a bill for the evaluation. And at a minimum, it would be $3,000. It could go up to $5,000. This was at a time where I was going to food banks to feed my kids because I didn't even have $500 in my bank. I don't even know if I had $200 in my bank account. And to be backed into a corner and told that you have to sign it. For one, you're going to get this huge bill. 2, the judge is going to agree to it anyway. I had no choice, like many of you. And I just remember it was the absolute worst feeling I've ever had. And then these people, my ex-mother-in-law, she would insert herself in every aspect of my life, of my case. I remember getting an email one day from my daughter's kindergarten teacher saying, oh, your mother-in-law is coming to read a book to the class. And I was like, wait, what? Okay. I remember when my little one was in preschool and I found out that she was applying to be the vice president of her, or vice principal of her preschool. You just can't make this stuff up. It's like a group of terrorists, and you're up against all of them. And I know so many of you can relate to this because I hear your stories. And I remember reading her declaration in 2011 about what a wonderful man Jason Robert Porter was, and that he, how dare I imply that she would ever put my daughters in a situation that would cause them harm. And that day, minors counsel was appointed to represent my daughters and to investigate the issues that were in front of the court. The issue at that time that was in front of the court was 100% Jason Porter. Ed Samoji was, I'm going to just say all their names because I can. And I will continue to. And I know that so many of you can't because, I'm dealing with a case in Washington right now where it's a dad and he's started to expose some things and they're going to put a gag order on his case. And survivors can't speak out because when you do, you get that gag order and then things get even worse behind the scenes. And I watch it happen a lot. And so I'm going to keep saying their names. Ed Samoji was appointed. He was standing in the courtroom that day. Wrong place, wrong time, however he wants to spin it. And the judge said, hey, Ed, here's your new case. The whole point of that court date was Jason Porter. And this was one of the worst days of my life. I remember going to sit down with Ed for my first meeting, and I had no childcare. I remember calling ahead of time and letting him know, my family's 2,000 miles away. I have no help. And they said, no, bring your kids in. We have toys and whatnot. They can play in the waiting room. So I leave my little girls in the waiting room, 2 and 4 years old, probably 3 and 5, go back in there. And I'm just so filled with hope because he's known as a shark attorney in town. And I just thought, wow, this is huge that he was appointed to represent my daughters. And so I start off talking and he mentions that my ex-husband and my mother-in-law and father-in-law had been there just days before. And I immediately had a sinking feeling in my stomach. And I knew what they are capable of. But I'll tell you, I wasn't fully prepared, because when I brought up the topic of Jason Porter to Ed's Samoji, Ed looked at me smug, like he does so well. He crossed his hands and he sat back in his chair and he said, well, your in-laws say that you have an issue with him because you had an affair with him and you're bitter. I literally felt like I was going to throw up in that moment. And I realized how truly sick these people were. And I remember thinking, this is how, I always wonder, like, when a group of people goes to rob a bank or commit a crime, like, how does that ever become a conversation? Like, hey, what are you doing next Friday? Let's go rob a bank. Like, the fact that people can bring something up in conversation, come together, and then execute something to this degree that is so sociopathic. The fact that all three of them could go into this office and say something like that. And then if you're even a semi-normal person, you're looking at the situation going, well, no one would lie about that. No one would make something like that up. But when you're dealing with a family that is so sick, they absolutely would, and they do. And I just felt so defeated in that moment. And I just remember going, I'm screwed. I don't even know how do you defend yourself without sounding like you're guilty, like there's truth in it? I was suffering from PTSD so badly. I just remember looking like a deer in headlights. And, this person who was appointed to represent my daughters failed them so heavily, because from that point on, over the years, the court allowed more and more contact with my daughters and these sick people and this family, and they all lived in the same house together. There came a point in my battle where, because my ex-husband had a DUI and couldn't drive, or had been driving my kids on a suspended license, and I was able to prove that to the court, then the burden fell on me that I had to drive my daughters 45 minutes up to their house to where they lived with Jason Porter and drop my little girls off there. It is the worst feeling in the entire world. And so fast forward, my daughters were officially protected in 2014. 2016, I got a call from my husband, Glenn, and he said, hey, what's your ex-brother-in-law's middle name? And I said, Robert. Why? And I was at Petco with my kids. And he hadn't connected the dots. He was just kind of working through something, and he said he was just arrested for child molestation. And I just remember, I don't really remember, actually. I remember having to sit on a bench. I told my kids to go up ahead of me and go look at the guinea pigs and the rats and all of those things. And I literally physically had to sit down on a bench right outside of Petco as I processed and as he read me the article. I shouldn't have driven my kids home. I don't remember the drive home, and I don't remember quite a bit for about 6 months. And it, when that is not the validation that any mom wants or any parent wants. We know at our core, our instincts tell us, and the court system silences us and shuts us up. Whether it's an official gag order or not, we're silenced. And, and that I will be using my story to continue even more so now that we have come, this is the complete picture. For the past 5 years since his arrest, we have been on a roller coaster that you could not even fathom. He fired his public defender pretty early on. And so it's been a roller coaster controlled by an absolute sociopathic pedophile. And he is said to be the worst child sex offender in the history of our county. The most number of victims in the history of our county. I believe there's 37 children involved in this case. And the longest running criminal case in the history of our county. And we've, there has been so many, he has had a sick fascination with me since I met he and my ex-husband on the same day back in 2000. And so for over 20 years, I've been on this roller coaster in a variety of ways. But there were so many junctures during his criminal case that he tried to pull me into the case. The most bizarre things. And it's been an absolute nightmare. And so we just finished the criminal trial last week. He was convicted on all but one charge, and we're done. I remember leaving the courtroom sobbing, ugly cry, loud, and just taking a seat in the hallway and sobbing. And somebody said, 5 years, it's a long time coming. And I just felt like screaming, like, no. For me, it's been 20 years of wanting these people exposed for who they are. And his mom has inserted herself in his criminal trial just like she did all along the way in my case, and to the point where she's writing letters, these glowing, what you need to know about Jason Porter, the son, how I see him. He was ASB president. He writes great poetry. He was on the football team. He is so generous. It's just, you can't make this stuff up. So that is what has happened recently. I am exhausted and depleted to my core. There's a couple of comments that I continue to see come through as I post about this on social media. And one of them is, what would you have done differently if you could go back? And I'll tell you, I don't know. I don't know if I would have done anything differently. We're in a very broken system. And somebody said the other day, it's not broken. It was set up this way. And that's a really valid point. It was broken from the beginning. I, have always maintained that mother, that I'm very pro-healthy parent. I don't care if it's a mom or a dad, but brutal honesty, did the pendulum used to be so far over onto mom's side in the 70s, back then? Probably, yeah, absolutely. The pendulum has swung way too far in the other direction, where moms are screwed in the system. And dads get screwed too, so don't send me hate mail. But overall, if I have to look through my lens of all 50 states, actually even bigger than that, we have an uphill battle. And accusations of sexual abuse, there's such a huge bias against moms that we make these things up. And it is a really scary road to go down, and so much of the family court system is just illogical. People who've never been in it look at it and go, wait, what? That doesn't even make sense. What do you mean? Yeah, I get it. None of it makes sense. And if you just look at national average statistics on child sexual abuse and then compare those to the reality of what the court finds as, founded accusations of sexual abuse, they're on a different planet. They're not even anywhere close to what reality is and what statistics show. Hard data, hard research. It's you're in this Alice in Wonderland type world when you're in this system. And so, and I know that here in California and in a lot of states, if a mom lodges sexual abuse accusations against someone and they're unfounded, which 99% of the time they are, you risk losing custody of your children because the other party can come in and file for full custody and win the way the law is written. And that is terrifying. So there are all types of children being forced into these situations, and there's nothing that can be done about it, because CPS is failing them, DCSF, whatever you want to call it, that is a more broken system than family court. And I'm not big on, I call it the should've, would've, could've path. I'm not big on that, going down that road, because it doesn't lead anywhere productive. So, would I have done things differently? I feel that I'm one of the lucky ones that successfully protected my kids. And so I believe it unfolded the way it did, and it's done. And so I can't say that. I did everything I could. I documented. That was my full-time job most days. And here I am today. I want to comment on something that I see. I've deleted a lot of the comments where people say I would have fled. It's almost like when I read comments in our survivor groups or, things like that, where people are trying to one-up each other on trauma. It's hurtful. And I'm going to say that on behalf, for me, no. I know my truth at such a core level. There's very few things that personally affect me, but I'm going to say it on behalf of all of the other survivors who are still going through this battle. Don't say things like that, because what it does, first of all, did I want to flee? Did I want to go underground? Would I have loved to disappear to another country with my kids back then? 100%. I didn't have the means to do that. And even the people who do have the means to do that, what ends up happening? You get caught. And then your children are 100% in the hands of their abuser. And so, those comments aren't helpful for other people who are still in this battle. And so I just ask, as a community, no matter whether it's my community or somewhere else on social media, that you think before you, I can't believe some of the comments I've had to delete in the past week. And I'm sensitive to that for other people, not necessarily myself. But I think it's an important topic that we all need to be aware of, is before we comment, especially in a survivor group, that we think about it and that we lead with kindness and compassion and empathy, because we've all been through enough. And, we need to be careful of that. And I know at our heart of hearts, that's, we are all wonderful, loving, kind people. And I know we're in a hurry and sometimes we write something, but just be sensitive to survivors. That's what I bring today. I will get back to questions next week. Always feel free to submit questions to us on the Instagram. We'll add them to our spreadsheet and we just kind of go through them. You can also email them to coffeedatewithtina@gmail.com and we pull from there as well. Thank you all so much for being here, and absolutely, Gigi, and thank you all so much. Happy Friday. Have a good weekend. I know I'm going to disappear for part of the weekend with my daughters and just decompress, and I'm looking forward to that. So thanks for joining me.